Okay, so the latest news is that unemployment has fallen to a 50-year low in November. So I have this article from CNBC. Job growth soars in November as payroll surged by 266,000 jobs. So the unemployment rate has recently just fallen to 3.5%, and the last time unemployment was that low was back in 1969. So, as you can see, unemployment is 3.5%, and the last time it was that low was in July of 1969. Though if you consider that back in 1969, the US was at the height of the Vietnam War, so a large number of the civilian population was drafted in the army, while today we still have a little involvement in Afghanistan, but we're largely at peace, and we don't have any large military deployments anywhere. So because 2019 is entirely peacetime, the low unemployment rate compares even more favorably to back then. Because again, back in 1969, part of the reason unemployment was that low was only because there were large numbers of young men deployed in Vietnam in the army, while today, unemployment is still this low without any large wartime deployment. So, unemployment right now compares even more favorably to then. The unseasonally adjusted rate is 3.3%, and that pretty much is the same as in October. But because historically unemployment rises a bit in November compared to October, the seasonally adjusted rate's down to 3.5%. So I'm going to read this article from CNBC about the unemployment rate. Job growth soars in November as payroll surged by 266,000. Non-farm payroll surged by 266,000 in November, better than the 187,000 expected by economists polled by Dow Jones. The unemployment rate ticked down to 3.5% from 3.6% back to the 2019 low, and matching the lowest jobless rate since 1969. The end of the GM strike had a big effect, boosting employment in motor vehicles and parts by 43,000. Part of an overall 54,000 gain in manufacturing. Average hourly earnings rose by 3.1% from a year ago, slightly above 3% expected by economists polled by the Dow Jones. The jobs market turned in a stellar performance in November, with non-farm payroll surging 266,000 and the unemployment rate falling to 3.5% according to the Labor Department. Number was released Friday. Those totals easily beat the Wall Street consensus. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones have been looking for solid job growth of 187,000 and saw the unemployment rate holding steady from October's 3.6%. The jobs growth was the best since January. While hopes already were up, much of that was based on the return of General Motors workers following a lengthy strike. That dynamic indeed boosted employment in motor vehicles and parts by 41,000, part of an overall 54,000 gain in manufacturing. So even ignoring the strike, there was 13,000 gain in manufacturing. Stock market futures surged in reaction to the better-than-expected report. Bond yields also surged. The vehicles and parts sector had fallen by 42,000 in October. However, the jobs gains were spread among a multiple sectors. Healthcare added 45,000 positions after contributing just 12,000 in October. Leisure and hospitality increased by 45,000, and professional and business services rose by 31,000. The two sectors respectively are up 219,000 and 278,000 over the past 12 months. Wage gains also were a touch better than expectations. Average hourly earnings rose by 3.1% from a year ago, while average work week held steady at 34.4 hours. Economists had been looking for wage gains of 3%. A separate gauge of employment that includes discouraged workers and the underemployed declined as well, falling to 6.9%, 1/10 of a percentage point below October. In addition to the robust November gains, revisions brought up totals from the two previous months. September's estimate was up 13,000 to 193,000, and the initial October count increased by 28,000 to 156,000. Those changes added 41,000 to the previous tallies and brought the 2019 monthly average to 180,000, compared to 223,000 in 2018. The economy needs to create 107,000 jobs a month to keep the unemployment rate steady, according to calculations from the Atlantic Federal Reserve. The unemployment rate of 3.5%, down from 3.6% in October, is back to the 2019 low and matches the lowest jobless rate since 1969. As I said before, that's not even a full comparison, because 1969 unemployment rate was boosted by the large number of men being sent to serve in the war in Vietnam, while the low unemployment rate from 1969 is being generated entirely in peacetime. I mean, yeah, we have some troops in Afghanistan doing support missions, but there's no large-scale deployment of ground troops anywhere. And for that matter, even at the height of the Iraq War in the late 2000s, there were only a fraction of troops deployed compared to the height of Vietnam, so that's just a tangent. The news was not all good. As the holiday shopping season accelerated, retail companies added just 2,000 net hires, as gains in general merchandise of 22,000 and motor vehicle parts dealers of 8,000 were offset by 118,000 loss in clothing and clothing accessories. I guess more online shopping is limiting retail positions in brick-and-mortar stores. Mining also showed a loss of 7,000 positions, bringing 19,000 the total jobs lost since May. Strong jobs report comes amid a challenging year for the U.S. economy. Recession fears surged in late summer amid worries that a global slowdown would spread to the American shores. The back-to-forth lobbying of tariffs between the U.S. and China also raised fears of instability, and the bond market sent what had been a reliable recession indicator when short-term government yields rose above their longer-term counterparts. The Fed reacted by cutting its benchmark interest rate 3 times, part of what officials deemed insurance against a potential slowdown. Those recession fears have ebbed recently, though as consumers and business sentiment remains high, spending remains resilient, and the stock market scales new highs. The Fed meets next week, and officials have been clear that they plan no further rate cuts unless conditions change significantly.